14, 13, 12, 11, 10,
Okay.
9, 8.
Can I see when we're on?
I'm just 5, 4, get ready, was, and go.
Well, g'day everyone, and welcome to this lunchtime jam. We just thought Innovation 2.0, what a topic to talk about. Is it the rise of applied innovation? And how does it differ from a lot of attempts at innovation to date? So I'm Warwick from Ideascale, the global idea management software company. I'll be your host today. I'm joined by Finbar O'Hanlon and Rachel Ooi. G'day, Rachel and Finbar. But before we kick off, I'd like to acknowledge the First Nations people, elders past, present and emerging, for it is our first innovators in this nation and across the globe. They have been inventors and innovators for thousands of years, so massive respect to our Indigenous mob. And to that note, I'm coming to you from Wurundjeri land, so please feel free to introduce yourself and acknowledge your lands in the chat. But without further ado, I wanted to introduce you to Rachel Ooi. Rachel is currently the Chief Growth Officer across Asia Pacific and Mental Wellness Lead for Dentsu International. Besides being a digital innovation catalyst for the past 25 years with strategic expertise on growth to scale in disruptions, convergence and integration, she's also a passionate strategist and pioneering advocate for sustainability and ESG. I met Rachel quite some time ago when she was at Ericsson here in Melbourne. She now resides in Singapore and gets to rock over to Japan and leads APAC for dentsu. In terms of Rachel's philosophy, which is how we connect in regards to both having an International Women's Day collaboration coming next week, her philosophy is life is short. Every day is a gift. Make it count, and it's your choice. There is more to life than we can dream of when we uncover what we are meant to be, unshaken, be awakened. So look forward to hearing more about that philosophy from you, Rachel. And then we've got Finbar O'Hanlon, the one with the hair all over the shop, coming to you live from his studio, which is this crazy den with lots of synthesizers everywhere. Finbar is an entrepreneur and inventor. He's got real world experience in the process of taking an idea and an invention then right through to IPO onto the ASX. He's got 30 years experience in both tactical and strategic applications of applied innovation, and he's globally certified as a Chief Innovation Officer and Innovation Professional by the world's leading body in relation to innovation, GINI, the Global Innovation Institute. Finbar's also been a chairperson of a public company as well as an executive board member on both Australian and international companies. So welcome, Finbar.
Welcome.
Let's get straight into it. So Finbar, I mean,
yes.
Innovation, it's one of those things, companies sometimes give it a crack and then they shut it down. There's so much going on. We've seen innovation happen at just so massive in these past 2 years, transformation, the whole switch to digital overnight. But why have traditionally businesses failed at turning innovation into value?
Well, look, in my perspective, in the work I've done and the people I've worked with, I think that it starts with a complete lack of understanding of what innovation actually is, and also a reason for why to pursue innovation. So if we look at the first part, so what is innovation? It's the creation of something new that provides more value for customers, business or society, right? So it's the creation and it has to have measurable value. And why pursue innovation? Pursuing innovation helps you stay relevant to rapidly changing markets or stay ahead of it. And so it starts there. Is if you don't have an understanding of that, what tends to happen is businesses set up a little innovation team, put a silo in, and hope that and think that the creative process is innovation, and it's all about let's come up with ideas. And so typically, following innovation through applied innovation is really understanding not just the front end, which is human-centered design, problem reframing, but it's also the mid-zone. How do you validate the business plan? What's the branding? How does it go to market? What are the distribution channels? How do you make sure that you can spend less on creating the innovation than you will get as a reward? It's the validation, the business models, the branding, these strategies. And then the back end, the execution. How does it test? What are the pilots look like? What is the feedback? What is the distribution? So there's a whole bunch of stuff. So I think what's tended to happen, why these innovations haven't turned into value, is because they've been treated as a creative process where there's beanbags and ideation sessions and human-centered design. And whilst that's great, that's an idea. It doesn't turn into or transfer into something that creates real-world value for the business. That's the way I think about it.
Yeah, fair point. And Rachel, what are your thoughts? Why do we seem to see a lot of businesses traditionally fail at turning that innovation to value?
Yeah, this is a $1 million question, right? So I've spent 25 years across digital transformation and transformation for corporations, where I see fail coming from few perspectives. First is innovation seems small in the beginning, so big corporations don't take it seriously. It's just a point, like proof of concept, a service. But it hasn't come to the commitment to really scale it up to make sure it's successful. So I think the commitment and also disruptions that's internal, that many leaders of big corporation hasn't learned to absorb that insight and learn how to turn that around to the ecosystem. So the first perspective that around commitment and being open-minded to make it successful, I think that's the first thing why they fail. The second part, I think, is very much around the team around it, and having the right team and right champions to champion innovation is so crucial. So we can have very established leaders, very established teams doing that, but having a different mindset. So understand this, right? So when we say innovation, we are there to solve problems with new ideas and a new perspective. So innovation is all about new perspective of solving a problem. So when we come with the old mindset, old ways of working, old ways of thinking, box mindset, that doesn't help to really solve the problem, having a new perspective and new ways of doing things. So that's the second part of it. Having identified the right champions in the pioneering team to really do that properly and come to accountability to really define what does this mean in terms of value to the organization, to the ecosystem.
Yes.
Because often than not, when I work with a lot of engineers, inventors, innovation leaders, it's a cool idea, and the team got very excited as well. But if it doesn't translate to what this means in value back to the corporation, back to the ecosystem, back to whomever they're serving of solving the problem, it really doesn't drive any meaning of that itself. Now, the third pillar where I see innovation fail in my course of experience is really the funding. So, well, here we have great startups, great ecosystem. The traditional operations may not, traditional corporations may not get it, but in a new community, in the ecosystem, new setup, we are limited by funding access, I would say. So if you look at the whole investment, private equity environment, venture capitalists, it has been very exclusive in the past, but I think we're going to see a different trend moving forward to have many more hubs opening up. Because when we are siloed in those innovation funding hubs specifically, it doesn't help scale to access to the international platform. So I hope, and with the age and time we're living in right now, that helps to open up the access, and VCs will come in and think differently, investment bankers will come in and think differently, and I think that's already happening with ESG to begin with. So that's a good way that we are going towards. So fundamentally, these are the three areas I've just described why innovation fail. I hope that addressed some of the questions. And
I think that's awesome, Rachel, what you said. Can I just jump in here? I think that from my perspective as well, that from a strategic level, from a top level of infusing a culture of innovation in an organization, it's all fine and well to talk about innovation and different thinking. There's not enough understanding from the top level of the risks by not meeting the currently changing markets, by not having an adaptive culture. And so it needs to be not so much from the tactical, there's a lot of work going in there, but from the strategic, I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done into explaining to organizations the risk involved in not actually understanding how to innovate properly, how to infuse that culture, how to build an enterprise or a strategic innovation program throughout because otherwise these silos and all this work that goes on, it gets sort of diffused through the corporate antibodies, which are constantly fighting it because they've got their work to do. But so I just think that, sometimes we need to sort of bring things back to risk as well as how great it is. There needs to be that sort of correlation, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. I think, interesting you talk about risk. I mean, Finbar, you and I have spoken many times around, boards should be thinking about an anti-risk or anti-disruption risk committee, right? Like there's a lot coming, a lot of sort of threats coming, and how do you react to those? It is a threat to their business model, right? To that point, Rachel, some of your Unshaken philosophy is all around impact. Do you think that will accelerating disruption result in actions towards greater impact? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I can talk the whole hour on this, but I'm just going to make it crisp today. So the philosophy of Unshaken, there are two big parts of it. One is to help and able to see the vision of what's coming, and I've coined the term called digital genesis. Digital genesis is really a AI-enabled circular economy that's people-centric, cloud scale, obviously AI enabled, I've mentioned. So in that context, seeing the vision, understanding what's to come in a way that eliminate the risk that we talked about, because when you see what's coming, if you don't do it, people who don't catch up is going to lose out in what's to come in that space, right? Metaverse is just the beginning of it. And we are living in such a world that many of us struggle with mental stress and wellness. If you take a look at millennials, we have about 40% white out with mental stress, and that's a fact and stats out there, right? So what's required for the new leadership or emerging leadership or old leadership are learning to cope with this is really empathy. Now, it doesn't work with if it's just focus on empathy. But what's important is converting empathy to making an impact. That's where impact comes in very important. So we can solve for many problems out there, including the United Nations 17 sustainable goals, whatnot, ESG, whatnot. But if there's no empathy that's driving this, right, and convert to impact, solving the problem with the innovation, it doesn't really equate to much. In the past, we solved for problems, monetizations. That's how a lot of startups make money. I think moving forward, there's going to be change of the wind towards solving for the costs, because I believe today we have plenty of innovations around in the world, but we have been living in a siloed world. We have not really connected that. So in perspective of digital genesis, when we learn to collaborate, rapidly collaborating, solving for the problems, I think that's where we can really drive a bigger impact. And that's why I've called the book Unshaken, because the two parts of it, one is to alert and awaken those who are kind of sleeping and languishing, which is all happening, to see what's coming. And it is our time to really take authority and governance and work with AI and technology, and not to outcast them, but and not to be fearful by what's coming, right? But to work collaborative and solve for the problem to make a greater impact. So I hope that kind of succinctly weave that together. Yeah, back to you.
Yeah,
back to you, Warwick.
I'll come back to you in a minute, Finn. But I want to just tap into that a bit further, Rachel. When we were talking, you spoke about the next generations, if you like. So, how can Gen Z and millennials co-create and accelerate their applied innovation? How can they take that leadership role in their organisations or, startup companies?
Yeah, first thing first, I want to first apologize because I think my generation, obviously I'm not I'm not Gen Z or millennials, I'm Gen X, and I think the baby boomers and Gen X, we have not done justice. We've been talking about ESG, I've been talking about solving problems and innovation, but really we have not really done it to solve many. So first of all, apologies on behalf of the generations. I think that's why I write this book, right? It's for millennials and Gen Z, and my kids are Gen Z. And millennial has been sandwiched in between generations, but it's so important for millennials leaders to step up because this is really the digital natives generation who really understand it much more than the bosses they reported to or reporting to be honest. And also, they're right in the juncture of what's coming with acceleration of AI and technology, and they know this so well, but being kind of suppressed, either with fear or with structure or with governance that's from the past. So the way to really unleash themselves to get out of it, I think there are two parts of thing, and that's kind of my book. The first part is having a pivotal mindset shift. Now it's not easy. We talk about fixed mindset, we talk about growth mindset, and I think people are very seasoned with that teaching right now. But pivotal mindsets takes further on top of growth mindset with risk. So having Finbar talk about that, and Warwick, you talk about that, right? So that the risk appetite is really important. Having able to envision what's coming, to have the risk appetite, knowing that they can do a lot more than just a role and just a job in a big organization. That pivotal mindsets, knowing that what value they can bring, what impact they can bring to be much more purposeful, is part one. Now, having the shift towards that, of course, it got to comes with hunger and desire, what they're solving the problem for, either for making money or for this. But millennials is a generation that's hungry to solve problems. That's something I know. Trying to help the world better, to be a better place. So that's a sweet spot for millennia. Now, the second part is really I've kind of elaborated quite a lot in the book Unshaken. It's how to not just be your best self. First of all, it's okay to be vulnerable, to know your worst self and best self. Example, I call myself a bitch when I'm at my worst self and I'm aware of it. And I call myself Mulan. That's a character in the Asian community. It's kind of a genre, but it's lady version of it. I call myself Mulan when I'm doing well, and I give a pat on my shoulder. So the level of awareness at the individual level is very important. The moment you know your worst self and best self, in fact, you're able to optimize your best self to the next level. So in the book, again, just 1 minute like summary. In the book, I've developed a framework called the Growth Trinity Framework that really helps to see how you can maximize your aura in perspective of talent, strength, and value where you serve to find fulfillment. But there also another end of the realm. Which realm are you operating in? Are you operating in just left brain or whole brain? I call whole brain intelligence, because left brain is where AI and technology can completely wrap over what you can do. So the second level is really the whole brain optimization. The third level is neuroplasticity intelligence. That's where we are able to transform ourselves, right? With the new thinking, new neuroplasticity that's within us. And that's something that machine or AI cannot do. And spiritual intelligence is a higher level. So the framework allow us to unleash our superpowers and to find sweet spot in digital genesis with our skills that we can really do well in that area. Yeah, I hope it's not too long to emphasize on that.
That's good.
No, I love it. I think even just that sort of term, pivotal mindset as well, I think that's brilliant. And spiritual intelligence, I did a bit of work on that a number of years ago as well, right? I mean, it's making sure that we're operating within our central purpose, and sometimes that's about our identity, working through that to know what our role is out there as well. Finbar, coming back to you.
Yep.
And I know we speak a bit about the beanbag kids and lots of ideas. How do we translate that design thinking into the business models of tomorrow?
How do we translate? Well, first off, let me say design thinking was a revolution because it put the human at the center, the human-centered design, it put the focus on the user or the customer, and a lot of validation around understanding the desires and the needs of the customer. And so design thinking is great, but turning that into value, I think it's interesting because when we talked about innovation 2, the people that I'm talking about that I've talked to that are talking innovation 2.0 is purely because they're thinking innovation is design thinking. They're thinking that is actually something innovative, and so it's getting mixed up into those two things. So, from my perspective, applied innovation is the application of a full systematized process, which is turning the ideas into actual action and creating things. And so, if we look at the word design thinking, very simply, it's thinking. It's a thought process that designers use about understanding how people interact with things, and there's a process around that. But innovation is a lot more. It's about it augments design thinking in one way. So if it's about I think was the question, how do we turn design thinking into greater value for business? Something like that.
And business, yeah.
So from at least my perspective, it's the conversation is around how do we really understand what innovation is? How do we augment the skills that we already have? Because look, innovation requires design thinking, human-centered design, problem reframing. These are processes involved in innovation, but it's not the only processes involved in innovation. That doesn't validate an idea. It's about turning the ideas into action. And I just think that what we need to do is to actually understand applied innovation, the mid-zone and the back end, and how do they all link together? And so I think the great news is people who have done design thinking have already got a massive head start. But it's about how do we thread the different components together to actually start to unblock this big deluge of validated ideas into things that actually create value for. It's not just for people; it can be for business. It could be for complete society, as Rachel's talking about. So at least from my perspective, it's applied innovation augments the design thinking process, but I don't think design thinking is enough, and I think a good indicator of that is to go and talk to everyone who's done design thinking and going, okay, how did you turn that into value? I think everyone would agree that it's actually not translating.
Yeah, so if I can add on it, Warwick and Finbar, completely agree with you. In fact, when I run design thinking with the teams in the past with corporations, what I see valuable is drawing commitment from the key stakeholders in the drawing board, because when different functions and departments and stakeholders come together, suddenly design thinking help to stitch the whole experience together. From one to another, and therefore the accountability to own that space and make it work comes alive. So that's one part of it. In fact, this would translate to the value each of them bring in totality, how this is going to transform the whole experience of either the customers or consumers. When it comes to the end of the consumers or customers receiving part, what I see amazing is the whole CX experience, customer transformation experience, which we are doing in dentsu right now, become live, because that drives uptake, that drives growth, that drives recurring revenue because of the recurring buy, right? So that the whole thing is highly valuable when we plug in and apply correctly. Yeah. I'll pause there. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to plug my battery in because it's running out of battery. I realize it's not enough. Yeah. Just stay on there.
No worries.
I'll come back.
No worries. We know it's early in Singapore at the moment. All good. So Finbar, are ideas the enemy of innovation?
Sorry, what was that question again, mate?
Are ideas the enemy of innovation?
This is a really amazing topic. It's something that spurred me onto it was actually a book by a guy called Michael Schrage, who did a book called The Innovator's Hypothesis. And basically his argument was ideas are the enemy of innovation, purely because in his hypothesis is that, you get these business idea holics, these people who just love throwing ideas in because it's basically, he calls them empty calories. It's a way to get excited, and people are all excited about this shiny thing. But it's when a business focuses too much on ideation and idea generation, often a business gets stuck because there's no pathway to turn those ideas into opportunities. And so in the context of what Michael Schrage talks about, it's about, instead of talking about ideas and ideation, let's talk about opportunities. And to form an opportunity requires an idea, experimentation, validation, prototyping. And it's about how do you come to the business with an opportunity, which can then start to talk about, well, this is how it talks to the market. This is how it might be marketed. This is how it relates to our current trajectory in terms of our current pathways to market. Here's how it meets the changing. It's basically a more formed. It's more form than an idea. And, ideas are so easy to come up with that they can confuse an organization with just too many great ideas, but without any real proper way of executing it. So when I get posed that question, are ideas the enemy of innovation? I would say maybe, but I think we need to start to think about how does the idea in the relation of a business turn into an opportunity? And this needs to be much more rigor around that. And to be totally honest, I think this whole conversation relates to that. It's about there's multiple pieces to this puzzle to be able to create value. And it's not just about fluffy ideas, but doing that is a really important part. So it's not like anything you've done in the past is wrong. So I don't know if I'm waffling on here, but I think that my answer would be maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can add some color to that as well, it's really two things, right? It's the scale. It's the scale and also the realization of value, which Finbar touched on. So we can have ideas, but the idea is not repeatable in scale, in scalable manner. It doesn't translate to any impact, right? So innovation only comes alive when that solves problem and really making some changes and transformation on consumer side. Then the innovation become alive from idea. I think it's just an infancy. It's just an infancy stage of something good from idea before it comes to innovation with something that we can scale and execute.
Yeah.
Look, I'm mindful of time. We did say it was going to be a rapid session, and let's respect people's time. Thank you so much for your time today, Rachel and Finbar. But before we go, just a few things I'm hearing about Unshaken, this digital genesis, pivotal mindset, spiritual intelligence, so much going on in regards to your philosophy, Rachel. It's due for release next week, March 8th, International Women's Day. Tell us a bit more about Unshaken and how can we support you? How are we going to know how to purchase the book or scale that Unshaken philosophy?
Sounds good. That's what I want to get to as well. Thank you so much for this platform. I think Unshaken will make a great impact out there from two perspectives. First is the mental stableness to understand what's to come, to reduce that uncertainty, because that's the root to anxiety. So the second part is really unleash a superpower of people to be able to not just stabilize or catch up in digital genesis, but to thrive purposefully in digital genesis. So the book will be available on Amazon on ebook format, 8th of March. Of course, you can just order like there, and the first day is going to be 50% off. So go grab on that day itself before it turns to full price. So again, this is just a start. It's not the end of the Unshaken. It's just a start of Unshaken movement. So I am trying to work with Warwick and Finbar and much more impact out there through communities and platforms. So any one of you see that energy and see that meaning and purpose on this coming together with the synergy, please reach out to Warwick, to Finbar, to myself. I think we are the generation, even though we look older, but we are the generation that's going to lead millennials and with all of you together to cross over to digital genesis, to the promised land.
Fantastic, Rachel. Thank you so much. And yes, I think we all are Gen X on this call, albeit you've got a millennial, Gen Z kids, and mine are Gen Alpha. So there we go. We'll pass on this. I'm sure they'll be the digital genesis, solving all these problems in years to come. Finbar, you've got an innovation boot camp coming up on the same day, March 8th, International Women's Day. I think you've even got a scholarship for a couple of ladies to join. Tell us a bit more about the boot camp.
Well, look, first off, I am super passionate about innovation. Get someone that looks like me. I've had an incredible life, lived in 5 countries. People often ask me, how do I do what I do? And it all comes down to innovation. And so I'm very passionate about sharing not only my journey, but the whole Ginny, which is this industry program, probably one of the best in the world, come out of Boeing, NASA, Whirlpool, industry-led via business. So to be a supporter of that and bring that to Australia, I'm very passionate about trying to simplify and get people started quickly. Trying to demystify what innovation is. You might have seen on LinkedIn some of my videos, bite-sized innovation, 1-minute snippets relating to trying to break down, to try and get people to go, look, if markets are changing rapidly and everyone agrees that the world's changing rapidly, how might we change with those markets to be adapted to it? And take all the fancy words out. So the boot camp is a 3-hour intense workshop, a lot of fun, going to crystallize a whole bunch of stuff out of the innovation professional course to get you on a pathway to potentially even getting certified as a certified innovation professional. But really, it's about starting to unblock some of these cognitive thought processes that are holding us back from actually being able to unlock the power that innovation brings.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Finbar. Well, look, I know folks have got to get back to work and live up to the digital genesis name tag that we all have to live through in this unshaken world that Rachel's talking about. And excited about the Innovation Bootcamp. I'll be there too, Finbar. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And I'm sure you can plug in. We'll send you some links with regards to Unshaken and the Bootcamp as well. And look forward to having more of these combos coming up around Innovation 2.0.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.